Hey everyone, you are listening to the Jill Berlin Show. Find Your Voice Government 101. And we are here with Congressman David Rouzer, who is an amazing congressman. A lot of people know him. And one of the things that I'm just going to talk about real quick about this congressman is I know a story about you. You don't know which one I'm going to tell.
I don't.
But here's the story. So I remember one time speaking with a congressman about how there was a group of ladies at, I believe it was a McDonald's, and they said that they didn't vote for him and they disagreed with him about X, Y, and Z. And so what does he do? He says, well, my name's David. Let me sit down and talk to you. Do you remember that?
I actually do remember that.
Yeah. And so that's why this guy serves in Congress for so long, because he's not afraid to have a conversation or agree to disagree about a subject. He just is fighting for Americans. So something that I think a lot of folks are wanting to know about and why we're doing this series is we want to be educated on what's going on up here, not listen to all the political talking heads. There are people out there who want to form their own opinion. So tell us, we've seen in the news that there's a possible government shutdown looming over our heads. Take us through the appropriations, like just step-by-step type of thing.
Yeah, well, it can get a little complicated, and so I like to try to explain this as often as possible so that folks back home can understand the voting choices that we have and much better understand why we vote the way we vote. And of course, there's a lot of factors that go into that. But the appropriations process is really confusing for a lot of people because you hear all this talk about a budget resolution, you hear talk about the budget reconciliation bill, and then you hear talk about appropriations package, and people also use the term budget when they're referring to the appropriations spending bills. And so it can get really, really, really complicated. So I'm going to lay it out this way to try to make it simple for everybody. The federal government is basically divided in terms of spending. You have discretionary spending, which is the appropriations process. That's about 24-25% of the total federal budget. And then you have mandatory spending, which is about 75% of the budget, and included in that mandatory category is interest on the debt. And that's what, when you hear talk about a budget resolution and a reconciliation bill, that deals with mandatory spending, revenues to the Treasury, and the debt limit. So that's all mandatory spending. The interesting thing about a budget resolution, you got to pass that. The House has got to have the same one that the Senate has. They got to agree on it. It's got to pass, and that opens up the process for budget reconciliation, which is dealing with mandatory spending, revenue, which is why you always hear about tax reform and tax cuts being part of a reconciliation bill. Years ago, when the Democrats had the majority in the House and the Senate, a supermajority, I might add, in the House and the Senate, as well as the White House, they used reconciliation to push through Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. So this is done pretty much every Congress, particularly when you have a new administration come in and you have a like-minded House and you have a like-minded Senate. You often see them put forward a budget resolution which triggers a reconciliation bill to deal with mandatory spending, deal with tax reform measures, and also to deal with the debt limit. But appropriations, on the other hand, it requires 60 votes in the United States Senate. So even if you have the majority in the House and you have the majority in the Senate and you have the White House, that doesn't mean you get your way completely on an appropriations package, because you still got to go find 60 votes. So next week, even among all the talk about a budget resolution and reconciliation bill that most people have heard a lot about here lately, this next week you're going to hear a whole lot about, is the government going to shut down? And they're referring to that 25% of the total federal budget that's appropriations. That's discretionary spending. You got to have 60 votes in the Senate. So that means whatever we pass in the House, if we pass a continuing resolution to continue funding from the previous year up through September 30th, which is the end of the fiscal year for the federal government, if we do a CR, that's short for continuing resolution, the Senate's got to pass it too. When the Senate, let's assume all 53 Republicans are going to vote for it. That means they got to go find 7 Democrats. And so there has to be a little accommodation there in order to pass an appropriations package. So a lot of people get really, really confused about that, because many times at the end of a fiscal year and end of a calendar year, we'll have all these approach bills packaged together.
Right.
And that's referred to as an omnibus. And you would think an omnibus means the entire federal budget. And any normal person would think that. But the fact of the matter is it's only dealing with that 25% of the total federal budget. The part of the budget that drives the debt is entitlement spending, mandatory spending, and healthcare is the main driver there. You address healthcare spending, you really would put a downward curve on the debt, on the increase in the debt. So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, I was going to say that was a great way to sum it all up. My question is, how do you convince those 7 senators to, come around?
Well, they have to be pretty convinced that if they don't vote for a CR, or if they don't vote for a new appropriations package, that when the government shuts down, they're going to be the ones to blame for it. And so you always see a lot of game of chicken, there, where the Democrats, will dare Republicans, if you include that in there, we're not going to, vote for your spending package, and you're the ones who are going to be blamed for the shutdown. And
that fear tactic works.
So it does sometimes. It does sometimes, but government shutdowns benefit no one, and they really are very harmful to the military in particular. And it's like taking a big factory and just shutting everything down. It costs a whole lot more to get everything back up and running again.
That's a really good analogy. Okay, so you are also the chairman of the Subcommittee on Highways and Transit. And you are also, tell us about the Surface Reauthorization Act, because that also kind of has to do with appropriations and how, you have appropriations, authorizations, and things have to be renewed.
Sure. So I'm on 2 authorizing committees. I'm on the House Agriculture Committee and I'm on the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. When I first came to Congress, I was appointed as chairman of the Livestock and Foreign Agriculture Subcommittee on House Ag.
And why was that?
Well, they knew my history.
I
had a lot of history with Senator Helms, Elizabeth Dole, handled agriculture, tobacco, and many other complicated issues.
Did you go to NC State and have?
I did go to NC State. I was an ag business, ag econ, and chemistry major.
That makes sense.
Most of which I have all forgotten. The chemistry in particular. The business and the economics I've not forgotten, but the chemistry I've forgotten most of that.
Yeah.
Except for the basics.
All right, but today, let's talk about today.
Yeah. So today I'm chairman of the Highways and Transit Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Surface reauthorization is just what it sounds like. It's roads, it's bridges, it's any kind of surface transportation, including rail. So we'll be focused on reauthorizing that legislation. It expires next year, but we're going to work hard to get a bill out of committee late this year. Probably in the next month or so, we'll be asking for members of the committee as well as other members of the entire House to submit their ideas and proposals and needs for their district so that we can incorporate that into our surface reauthorization bill. We'll be taking money that was earmarked or specified, in some cases mandated for electric vehicles and charging stations and a lot of things that, quite frankly, there's not a tremendous amount of support for nationwide. In reorienting those dollars, our goal will be to reorient those dollars to traditional roads and bridges. Just look at southeastern North Carolina, look at North Carolina as a whole. We have a lot of people moving into the state. We need more resources for roads and bridges to help the state out. All those transportation projects in the state of North Carolina, for example, just like any other state, they determine the priority in terms of where money goes, and then based on what they choose, there are formula funds and grant funds that are used to help supplement that.
And would you say that typically within your subcommittee there's a lot of bipartisan support, or is it a little bit more divisive?
No, in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, on the whole, it's still fairly bipartisan because roads and bridges are everywhere.
Right.
I used to be chairman of the Water Resources and Environment Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Not everybody, but many members have Army Corps of Engineer projects and challenges as it relates to their waterways. You have water and sewer issues all over the country. And those are very much bipartisan issues, not partisan issues. It's
Yep.
not like dealing with health care. It's not like dealing with tax reform. These are bread and butter, issues that are important in every district, whether they're represented by a Democrat or a Republican.
Is there anything else that you want to add that maybe I'm not asking about? I know you got to go. You got to go vote.
Yeah, we're going to have to vote here before too long, but folks will hear a lot about a potential government shutdown in the next week. The current continuing resolution expires March the 14th, which is next Thursday, next Friday. And but I anticipate if the government does shut down, I think it will be temporary, only a couple days, and we'll end up passing a continuing resolution through the end of this fiscal year, which ends September 30th. But along the way, I hope we can get a new appropriations package done, because when you do a CR, you're basically locking in place for, in this case, till September 30th, all the priorities of the previous administration. And so you really do need to have a new appropriations package. We have that appropriations package ready to go. It's just we've not had any cooperation from the Democrats to get it done. They've been wanting all these provisions in the approach package that would rein in President Trump and prevent him from executing his responsibilities. And we're just not going to go for that.
Yeah.
We've been very strong and united in opposition to their demands. They have finally dropped that demand, but they've dropped it so late in the game that it's not quite enough time to get an appropriations package done by the end of next week. So most likely we're looking at a continuing resolution. Hopefully we get more buy-in from our friends in the Senate, in particular, Schumer and company, to go ahead and get a appropriations package done soon thereafter. We get the CR passed next week.
Okay. All right. Well, Congressman David Rouser, I really appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
All right. Thanks.